Far Cry is raising the bar for first-person shooters everywhere, except Germany, of course. Star Siege Tribes, released in 1998, did the same thing for online shooters. Now, the third installment in the series, Tribes Vengeance, is adding an extensive single-player campaign, and it's this week's first look.
Tribes and Tribes Vengeance is a game about the freedom of movement. It's a game where you have a jetpack at all times, which allows you to fly up into the air at any time, go to any height, and achieve lots of speed. It's a game about combat, so you're doing all this while fighting other players in the case of multiplayer, or Tribes Vengeance also has a complete single-player experience.
The big difference between it and any other first-person shooter is the amount of mobility and maneuverability that you have as a player. Certainly, the third dimension is open to you as soon as you have a jetpack. And that's the first step, is understanding the jetpack can now let you move to places that you can never get to. But it also adds into the whole sliding or skiing aspect of the game. There's a scale of speed that you can achieve. It's not digital, it's analog. Now you're screaming across a map, or you're walking across it depending on how you want to deal with the situation.
Need a ride?
Looked at Tribes and realized it's a fun game, but it can be quite challenging, and yet there's no way for players to sort of ease into the experience. So we've introduced single player to Tribes and Tribes Vengeance, and the game is 50% multiplayer, 50% single player. Single player is a complete story-driven campaign, basically. You play through as a number of different characters from a number of different perspectives, and you're gradually introduced to the game as you go along.
We tried to do something different just in general for games, and the idea behind our story is that each mission has a different character, and you'll see a different point of view of a particular story element. And also the story takes place in two periods of time, the past and the present. So you'll jump from one character in the present, you'll see the repercussion of an action that may have happened in the past, and then you may get to play a different character in the past and see what it was that they did that caused that repercussion.
Tribes 1 was released, must have been 5 or 6 years ago now, and at the time it was quite a new experience. It was one of the first games to have vast, outdoor, expansive environments, one of the first games to have vehicles, team-based vehicles, and it was actually one of the first games that was online only. It was particularly successful as a pirated game, actually, which made it sort of a very appreciated underground experience. Tribes Vengeance builds on both of those games. It acknowledges their weaknesses and tries to improve on those while adding things that are new to the game, some new equipment, some new movement in the game, trying to attract new players while preserving the existing community.
This is the constant challenge, trying to modify a game which has a very strong following and has a lot of stuff in it that people are used to. If you ask different people what the core of Tribes is, a lot of people will give you a different answer. So it was down to us to kind of identify what we thought the core was and try and emphasize that while not cutting away too much of what we considered non-core. So day to day, we consider every single item in the game, we consider every single weapon, every mechanic, and just make sure that it's still part of the core, or it's simple enough and easy to understand that it can be construed as part of the core.
The trick is to live in that shadow while attracting new players.
Tribes Vengeance doesn't use a class-based system as such. It has a role-based system, by which I mean you can pick your own role and then you can create the role that you want to play. Then on top of that, you've got all of the different weapon types, which suit different people down to the ground. There's a sniper, there's a mortar, there's various other weapons which haven't been announced, but each one of those lends itself to a different type of play.
And every single piece of equipment has a purpose and does something and is hopefully intuitive and understandable. The idea being that this aspect of choice in Tribes, it's one of its strengths. You create your own classes. You don't just choose a medic or a fighter. You choose an armor type and a pack and some weapons, and you combine those. You mix and match to create your own experience, your own sort of personalized experience the way you like to play the game.